Colonel Zarumba, you and I served together in the 414 Civil Affairs from roughly 2008, 9-ish to 2012, correct?
Yes.
All right. And I've seen this man. This dude's a master when it comes to juggling monkeys, chains, and chainsaws and what have you. Because we were always understaffed across the board, never had enough money to get anything done correctly, and we're short on equipment. So it was literally a 3-ring circus of 3-shell Monty just to get mission capable, to get guys to training and what have you. And during that time, I believe the 414 trained, I believe it was, 6 companies to go over to Afghanistan, Northern Africa, and Iraq. I'm trying to remember. It's 5
Yeah,
or 6.
it was about 5 or 6 companies.
Yeah.
Even though the unit was not combat ready,
Yeah.
we didn't have the personnel, the equipment, and the proper leadership.
Yeah, and remember when they'll tell you, like, oh, well, your dwell time, you can dwell here for 4 years before you get deployed again. That never fucking happened.
No. So what they used, in fact, years later, I was asked to talk to the Government Accountability Office about how they did this. They used a deployed UICs. So it wasn't the unit. The unit had basically a shadow of itself that was left in the rear, and the unit received a different identification number. So technically, they created 2 units out of 1.
So they were finger fucking it.
Yeah. So to create a company, they had to bring in soldiers that never worked together from across the entire Army Reserve. For example, when I deployed into Iraq in 2009 with the 414th, most of those soldiers were not from the 414th. I think we had a handful, 4 or 5 of us. The rest were brought in from elsewhere, but on paper, it looked like it came from Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah. And I remember during the 09, we actually had the lieutenant colonel in the rear thinking she was a command of the guys out in the, in sector.
Oh, yeah. We call her Dina.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's a few letters before the Dina, but we
that would be BITCH.
Yeah, I don't. That's not putting it nicely. Yeah, that was probably my first experience with, as probably yours, with extreme toxic leadership. That woman had no business being in charge of herself, let alone other troops. And we saw the difference between Dina and when the other lieutenant colonel came 2 years later. It was night and day. Night being Dina, day being the new lieutenant colonel. Unit changed within a weekend's worth of time.
Correct. And then, you were there when you saw me get my black belt in administrative violence towards the end of her command. Were you?
Oh yeah. I think we all shared that experience.
I was sitting in the dining room when that happened. Yeah.
At best, it was bizarre what was occurring in that unit.
And I could not see. And the civil affairs falls under a command structure called KPOC. And if you want to see the definition of complete incompetence, you just get assigned to KPOC and you stick around for like 8 to 10 months and you will see it firsthand.
Yeah, I think during that time, KPOC was under special ops, and then they changed it over to the Army Reserve for training and everything else. Mm-hmm. And they needed, so these other branches were heavy with high-ranking officers, the majors and lieutenant colonels. There's no place to put them. So civil affairs has a requirement for a lot of these. So basically the junk from these other units was put into these KPOC units.
Yeah.
We saw the results of that.
Remember Buzz Lightyear?
Oh, no. Which one was Buzz?
Kuzno.
Which one?
Kuzno.
Oh, I thought we're not naming names here.
Well, you don't know.
Oh, and away we go.
And he's the one that I actually, when I told the story, someone's going to die, he was the guy in command. Because he would come up with these crazy, stupid orders. And he'd try to give these, like, briefings over like mock terrain models, and I'm like, oh my god, this guy's gonna get people killed.
Yeah, just he had a lot of pressure on him from higher.
Yeah, because
He voiced his concerns. These commanders of these companies at that time did not have much leeway. So probably at the NCO level, they only saw the immediate leader, which was the company commander. But I think the problem started a couple levels higher. He was the messenger. Granted,
Correct.
some of these guys should have had the intestinal fortitude to stand up and do something. But I could now I see the stress that they were under, like I was the last few years, and that's a difficult thing to do.
I know. I actually took a lot of stress off of all the commanders I had because I wrote a lot of their op orders for them. I would just say, give me your intent. I would go on my computer, find an old op order, cut, paste, change some shit around. Boom, there you go. Because they would
stress have to be depopped.
Well, if it's already 85% done, I mean, there's only 15% that needs to get depopped. Yeah, because I had a standing rule when it came to Zarumba, because he would have me write memos, and I would write it up and I'd bring it to his office, and if it took more than 3 times, because he would like mark it like an English teacher, after 3 times I put it on my desk and I move on to something else the next day.
Oh yeah.
Colonel, do not let this man write a memo.
No. It was a fun activity for me just to see what Popp would come up with. I mean, it was pretty entertaining.
You think that's bad at the Pentagon? You sit there in your office. You were at the Pentagon, Tom. You know what every 15 minutes, some 2-star, 3-star comes in your office with their hair on fire. Colonel, I need this tomorrow. Yes, sir. I'll get right on that. As soon as they walk out of my office, right in the shredder, close the drawer, call it good. Yes, sir. 3 bags full, Roger out.
Yeah. But this is what the military. This is how it was before this woke stuff. I can only imagine how fucking crazy it is now.
Oh boy.
Because remember, like, it seemed like every 30, 45, 60 days ish that we'd always have a suicide stand down. Because more guys were popping their top and unzipping their meat suits, and it was always the same shit. Watch your buddy, call this number. We go through all the same stuff, and it was just pointless, in my opinion.
Yeah, that was the only way. If you noticed, if something bad happens in the military, the first thing they do is do a stand down, usually a safety stand down, a suicide prevention stand. And that's just to cover their butts. And they could say that we've done something, but getting people in a room telling them over and over about safety and suicide doesn't really do anything. But no. that was their mark, their benchmark for having done something. And everyone was good with it. They still are to this day.
Well,
what happened after this? It was the extremist stuff stand down. I was part of that too. In fact, my boss told me I couldn't speak up during. I couldn't ask any questions.
Extremist stand down? What the fuck's an extremist stand
down? They did it at all levels back in after January 6th.
Yep.
Extremist stand down, man.
What he means, Sir Colonel Murray, is any white male Christian American who is patriotic and loves his country.
I know exactly what it was. I guess what I'm in awe at is they actually went through with it at the division and brigade level all the way down to the squad level, and people went along with it. I'd have been like, who the fuck ordered this, and why the fuck are we doing this, and what the fuck is wrong with you?
And it got to the point where we were wasting like 30% of all of our training time doing this bullshit.
Oh, it's been going on for a long time, Popp. This is not new.
Yeah.
This I could go back to 07, 08, and how many hours of training did you have to do on, sexual harassment, all of the other. I mean, it was we counted it one year. It was like 37 to 40 hours of training just on
the mandatory training.
Yeah.
What a waste
and that's not the SRPs and all the other readiness stuff that you spend days and and cycle and maps doing, for pre-deployment stuff every single year. That was like, over 70 hours. When you add it up, it's like 350 hours of bullshit training that back then, I can only imagine how bad it is now and how retarded it is.
And when I was working, as a team sergeant, and I was literally pulling my hair out what little I have left about all of this useless training, I literally, on my own dime, bought, I believe, half a dozen airsoft AR-15s and M9 Berettas, built a shoot house out of scrap wood and bullshit behind the reserve center. So when we had downtime, I had my guys out there, doing room clearing, fighting out of a vehicle, castle keep maneuvers, doing all the stuff they would need to do because they were going to go to Iraq or Afghanistan and they needed to learn how to shoot, move, and communicate. And trying to train these guys while they're learning this bullshit that it's mindless drone work. Let's face it.
Was this at the building in Southfield?
Yeah.
Where did you put? I worked like a quarter mile from that building. Where the hell did you put a shoot house?
Right behind the motor pool. Look, I Green Beret that shit. What do you want?
That's fine. That's fine.
You know how I operate.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, all these stories I'm hearing, this is nightmare fuel for me. I was the operations NCOIC for 8th Army's G5 for civil affairs. And I had a female lieutenant colonel who, thank God, was absolutely squared away. God bless her heart. And we had a 1-star out of Utah. He was with, I think, 11th Group, General Denny Klein. He was a good guy, too. But she didn't put up with any of this. Was in 1998. She would just pencil whip that stuff, the sexual harassment training and all that. She'd just like, get it out of here. We're not doing that. We have an actual mission to do. And then when we did like RSO and Is and NEOs and stuff, we got flooded with reservists, and they had all the requirements for that too. And she'd be like, Sergeant, just pencil whip that shit. Yes, ma'am. Get it out of the way. They need PT tests. They don't need this training.
That's
yes,
right.
ma'am.
The best mandatory training I ever saw was when I was in Special Forces. We had a guy in our unit who was an actual auctioneer, and he would run through 8 hours of mandatory training in like 45 minutes. And I'm telling you, it was comedy gold, especially like the sexual harassment, like don't touch the titties, don't touch the butt, don't touch this, don't put your penis here, don't talk to this part. And it was hilarious. It was great. I wish I recorded that.
That's brilliant.
It was great. But this is what I'm trying to do here is in the current year, I can't recommend anyone go in the military unless you have no other option.
No.
Because it is absolutely toxic now. And it's in the enlisted ranks all the way down into like the E3s, E4s. And it's literally, in my opinion, our military is mission incapable on a mass scale. I'm not talking about the 82nd or 101st or, Delta Special Forces units, but they can't wage, full scale brigade combat team operations against conventional forces. You need to have troops to do that.
It's worse than that.
And Colonel Zarumba just got out last year in 2023. How many of the officers did you see dropping packets to retire as soon as they got enough time?
So many that the conspiracy theory is that the systems were purposely shut down not to let these people retire because they had so many at one time. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone that I know who I worked with here on Fort Bragg that had 18 years and over, they're all putting in their retirement packets. That's not normal. You lose your institutional knowledge, right? And these are some of the best people.
Yeah,
so I don't
Bragg,
think it. Yeah,
that's the home of the Special Forces and 82nd Airborne.
Yeah, they don't care though. They don't care. This is a bigger. There's a bigger picture here at work that is playing out. And Tom and I talked about this yesterday. Which, by the way, I'm glad we talked yesterday, man.
Thanks.
You gave me some food for thought that I didn't have. But let's go back to 2001 after 9/11. So when 9/11 happened, this malfeasance that we're getting to started back then. This is not a new phenomenon. Neither is the information war. back then, the mantra and the doctrine was, if you're not with us, you're with the terrorists. And that mantra carried us through 2008, and then Obama came to town. When Obama came to town, the whole intent was to demoralize, demilitarize, and decentralize the military. And they have done a very, very good job.
Yeah.
And now they're in the information warfare side of that. And if you watch what they're doing, they purposely used the vaccine to drive out anybody that had a strong will. Then they used the UCMJ-ish, because they didn't really follow the UCMJ. And you can talk about Gomar some, because there's a lot to that, right? Because that, you know, when you start your career, they tell you if you don't get prosecuted, you make it to 20. That's a successful career, because you'll have complaints, EEOC, IG complaints, your whole career. It's just how the military goes. Well, they purposely have set conditions so they can go to Congress. And you said this yesterday, Tom, so I'm going to give you credit for this, because this was I hadn't said it this way. I'm glad you did. That they're purposely setting conditions so they can set up a draft. And what they need is an army that's not loyal to the Constitution. It's no coincidence that they have moved 12 to 15 million Chinese regular army across our border. There's no coincidence in that. They need an army. And it's no coincidence they've moved all of our strategic reserve equipment to Ukraine and into Poland right now. Because what do we do when we move equipment overseas? We leave it there. We don't bring it back here.
Yeah.
All of our stockpiles are overseas. So there's a bigger picture to this that is far more dire than people realize. And all of the DEI, the trans nonsense, that's noise. What it really is it's a reason to condition and indoctrinate the youngest troops, because they only need one generation, and they've got the indoctrination to a T. Look at who they're indoctrinating right now. DEI is not out there. Sorry, diversity, equity, and inclusion is not pervasive in our market because they give a shit about DEI. It's there to discriminate against white people and create a race war, which is exactly what they're doing in the military right now. They're indoctrinating all of the predominantly lower income who join the ranks that white people are bad, and there's a systemic racism throughout the white culture, et cetera, et cetera. This is a sustained influencing operation that's been going on for the better part of 20 years. It's just a different dress. And the danger in this is that we're talking about leaders that are unaccountable. Well, I can tell you that there was leaders unaccountable, because I worked with 426 CA in the desert when I was in Mosul, and I wanted to shoot that commander every fucking day I talked to him. He was combat ineffective every day, and I kept saying to General Ham, just let me shoot that son of a bitch, and I'll take over that battalion and take the fight to the enemy. But that guy has got to go. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and I don't give a fuck what pressure he was under. One of my good friends was killed on a patrol that should have been in charge of that battalion. He was a way better commander than the dipshit they had in charge.
Watch Grunt Speak live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to join Popp for Supporter Sundays, go to redonkulous.com/donate and make a monthly pledge. A link is in the Meat Gazer box.